What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first ever episode of PonderPod. I'm your host, Colin. PonderPod was created so I could have interesting conversations with interesting people about their life experiences and what it is that drives them every day, all while having an open and honest dialogue that remains respectful from start to finish. I want to have a safe space where we can talk about anything from politics to religion, aliens, whatever it is, and be honest. And that only happens if we know that the people talking to each other are being respectful. So that's what we're going to do. This first episode is about COVID and what COVID taught me about myself and others, and features two of my newer friends, Mike and Shane, from the Triple XP podcast. Triple XP is a gaming podcast, and I've been part of 4 episodes, I think, of theirs as a co-host and as a guest. And it was really them that inspired me to do this on my own. They did an episode about mental health. And after that episode, I reached out to them. I was like, hey, guys, I think I want to do this. Like, I think I could take the more serious topics that aren't gaming related and really do something with it. What do you think? And they're like, we're supportive. You should do it. So several months later, here we are, and we finally recorded this episode. You will notice that they call me Cheese. My username for gaming is Made Out of Cheese, so they know that my name is Colin, but they just call me Cheese. It's weird, it's random, but it is what it is, and I've never had a nickname before, so if it's Cheese, I'll take it. This podcast will develop. I can tell you right now, this backdrop is changing, my office setup is changing, and you'll notice that from episode to episode. The segments will develop a little bit more each time. The editing will get better each time. Hopefully, I'll get better at facilitating the whole conversation, but I hope you're here from the start to the finish, and I hope you can provide feedback of what you'd like to see different, any suggestions you may have. If you have ideas for topics, if you have ideas for guests, please let me know. There will be a comment section below on the YouTube channel. My DMs are open on Twitter and Instagram. If you have my phone number, whatever, let me know. I want to hear from you guys. So thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the first episode of PonderPod, episode 1, what COVID taught me about myself and others.
Yeah.
All right, so Mike, you go first. Tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe a little bit about how we met each other. You guys, I guess I met Mike and Shane the same way, but go for it.
So I'm Mike. I formed with Shane a group, a Discord of Twitch streamers, through which we met you, Cheese. I'm not calling you Colin, I'm calling you Cheese. That's just
so that's gonna be
go.
That's gonna be a thing everybody needs to know. It's called Cheese FM because Cheese Made Out of Cheese is my gaming Twitch username. So most people that are my gaming friends know me as Cheese, which is ridiculous and hilarious. And then anybody who knows me in real life knows that my name is Colin. You guys also know that my name is Colin, but that's just weird for you guys to call me that at this point. So
yeah, no, I'm not doing it.
Okay, that works for me. Shane, you're up.
Oh, I'm up, am I? Yeah. So yeah, I'm. As you said earlier, with regards to Triple XP, I'm Mike's other half, the more serious side. And yeah, met Mike through streaming and Discord and whatnot, and that was over a year ago now, and we've not looked back since, and that introduced me to you. Also, friendship. It has been a beautiful friendship. It's a rather concerning one at times as well. I am really enjoying as well just watching how nervous you are on this first episode, because it just brings back memories to our first episode that 3 or 4 months ago now.
I gotta tell you, maybe about 24 hours ago, I started to I'm like, God, I gotta sit down and I gotta come up with what we're gonna talk about, a little bit of an outline. And after I started writing, I'm like, this is a horrible idea. Like, is it too late to not do this at all? But then by the time I got started, I literally have 3 pages of notes, and I'm like, I think this can work. And I think, honestly, partnering with you guys, at least for this first episode and as part of the Triple XP family, I've been on your guys' podcast, I think 4 times now, 2 as a co-host. And this Cheese FM would never happen without you guys pushing me to do it. So I appreciate that. I thank you guys, and I'm glad to have you on as my first guests. So,
We
Yeah,
promise you, it will get more comfortable as well.
Oh, I
We're
know, I'm
19
sure.
episodes in,
I'm-
and it feels like nothing now when we do them.
when I'm on your your podcast, I'm not nervous because I'm like, this has nothing to do with me if it goes badly. But now that this has me attached to it directly, I'm like, oh shit, we got to do this right. All right. So, COVID has been a roller coaster for all of us in so many different ways, even still, and it's been about 10 months. So, let's start from the very beginning. 10 months ago, end of February, early March, when you guys first found out about COVID. What were your thoughts? Like, what did you really think COVID was? What did you think that really meant? Were you worried? Were you scared? Mike, you had a kid on the way, born just right around the start of this. So how did that affect you guys? Like, what was going on in your head?
I think when I first heard about it, it was just sort of localized in China.
Yeah, Wuhan.
And it just because it's like so far away, it just didn't seem like an issue whatsoever. And then you hear about more and more countries like getting cases, and
I think Italy was the next one up. Really, that was really like
I think so,
wildfire spread.
Yeah, but it was just like an avalanche. Like all of a sudden, we were all just like fully shut down as a country, and all the airports closes, everything like that. So yeah, it's just I think it hit everyone just really unexpected.
Yeah, definitely. With like what Mike was saying, and I think it was the same over in the US. Cheese, you correct me if I'm wrong, but initially all of the news outlets were like, "Yeah, it will be fine. It'll be fine. It'll come over. Everyone will get a little bit ill, but it'll be gone in a month. It won't be
just
an
like
issue."
the flu. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, we'll have minimal outbreak. It won't be an issue. And then, like Mike said, it just took everyone by storm. And even the lockdown, I remember thinking, oh, yeah, you know what? We'll get this lockdown out of the way. It'll be a month or so, and then everything will be back to normal. And now I haven't left the house in about 4 months.
When was your first lockdown?
I think it was March. No,
March.
April?
March, April, maybe.
Was it a national lockdown or like a regional tiered? I know you guys had the tiers at least more recently, but
I think
was it just shut down
national
completely?
to start with?
Wow.
Yeah, it was like a national thing.
See, we never got to the point where it was an actual national lockdown. My state would not do the lockdown, which, again, we're one of the states that was still under fire for the way it was handled. And so we never actually had a lockdown. We had, if you can stay at home, stay at home. My employer sent us home, like the second week of March, which was actually during our spring break. So a lot of people were on vacation. I know I had 2 or 3 coworkers that were in like the Bahamas or Jamaica or something. And like, they didn't know anything about COVID because they were detached from the news. So when it first came to the US, I think it really started in like New York City. I think that's really where it started, and they started to do like the masks and shut down, and people had to stay home, and we're like, this is getting very real very quick, and it's almost terrifying because even with like the stuff in China, I think that really started in like November, maybe, I could be wrong, but I think it was like November, December, and then January it kind of started to creep in. Like there was like a case in California, and we're like, they'll be fine, whatever. And then slowly it just turned into like, I have to work from home for the next 4 months. I think I was home, and then I've been back in the office since June or July, I can't remember. But point being, I remember it was kind of scary because it was only a few people that had it at that point. And that's very, very important and interesting to remember that this panic all started, at least here, when there was like 5 known cases out of, I don't know how many people live in our state, 1.5 million maybe. So like, that's very odd that we're that concerned about that small, that isolated of an incident. And then nowadays we're having a couple thousand cases positive a day for a while. So the fact that we had this crazy national and very regional at the same time panic around something that was so isolated in the beginning and misunderstood. That's probably where the fear came in, to transitioning into like, okay, well, we only had 6,000 new cases yesterday, so you can go to work again. That's just bizarre to me. That doesn't make any sense. But that doesn't, I mean, I won't get political. It doesn't matter that much, but it's just like, how odd that our priorities have shifted that much, that quick, just because we're like, okay, this has gone on too long. Let's get back to our lives. Let's go back to work, and let's just wait until this ends. It's been almost a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
It's
it's interesting though that you raise about not having a national lockdown, and I think it's really important that we remember, like when you consider the size of the UK, it's not comparable. Like, some of your states are bigger than our country.
I looked this up.
It's
one
not
time,
comparable
actually.
to.
I'm looking it up again to see. Because
Like, yes, from an economical point of view, it's going to have just as much effect. But with regards to land mass and people, it's
Yep.
just not comparable, really.
I'm looking up to see what the UK population is. Okay, so your entire country, the United Kingdom, I guess, as a whole, this says 66 million. But that sounds like a lot. Is that right?
Probably.
Yeah,
Sounds about right.
Sounds about right.
We're pretty densely populated in a lot of areas.
Oh, that's true. You're a smaller landmass, but you're pretty populated.
Crammed in.
Because I know.
Yeah.
So California is 39 million. That might be the biggest population in the US, but that's also a pretty huge state. Iowa is 3 million people. So that's pretty tiny, but I don't think you guys as a country are much bigger than Iowa, if I recall correctly.
Well, yeah, and this is the thing. Like, a national lockdown makes sense when you've got 66 million people in a very small landmass. When you've got 3 million people in a fairly large landmass, for that amount of people, actually, is a national lockdown the right move?
Yep.
So, like I said, not getting political, but we've got to consider that those aren't really comparable. But it's interesting you raised about having friends out in other countries, because when the lockdown first came into effect in the UK, a member of my team was out in Spain, and he was on holiday out there, and he was literally under military lockdown in his hotel room. He said that literally the holiday got cut to the point that they weren't allowed to leave their hotel room unless if it was to buy toiletries and supplies. The rest of the time, he said there were like guards walking the street, and you just weren't allowed out. So out of their 2 or 3 week holiday, they spent 2 weeks of it just in a hotel room, because they just couldn't, and there was no way to get back either, because they were like being really careful about when they brought people back.
That's insane.
Madness.
So that's the next thing I want to talk about, is the madness around getting supplies that you need before a lockdown. So I don't know what it was like there, and that's why you guys are here to tell me. But like here, getting even simple things like toilet paper was absolute madness. People were spending like $50 for a case of toilet paper that would normally be like $15. So I remember going to the grocery store that's close to my work on my way home from the last day, when they're like, okay, you guys are going to work from home for 2 weeks and we'll see what happens from there. Didn't know it was going to turn into several months. So when I went to the store, though, it was madness. Every time I think about COVID, I think of, is it District 19? Is that the movie? Just like any of those apocalyptic, or like there's a virus, or any of those crazy quarantine type movies. That's kind of what it was like going in, and I just needed to get simple things like canned vegetables. We were trying to get like beans and some pasta and bread. Those were the main things. I was like, okay, if we get some of this stuff, we have enough other stuff like in our freezer, we'll be fine for a couple weeks. Let's just try to get it. There were signs on the shelf saying limit of 2 canned goods per person. Those cans are like 50 cents a piece. So that's typical normal stuff you go to the grocery store and buy, and they were limiting it, and there was just some of the shelves were literally 100% empty. And this was like before we knew what was happening, but again, that's that panic of what is this and how long is it going to last, and what can we do right now to make sure our families are fed and safe and going to survive this nuclear winter that we're quickly coming up to. So how was it there? Did you guys have the issue getting anything? were some people just going crazy for no reason? My cat is tangled up in my headset. I'm sorry. Was there anything you guys tried to get and couldn't? Things you had to wait for? What was it like?
So for me, being like a new dad at the time, just wrestling with the cat.
Yeah.
Being a new dad at the time, baby formula, like the powder that we need to feed the baby, was just you couldn't get it anywhere. We had to like buy it on different like internet sites and stuff like that. But the price just like skyrocketed. It was like 50 quid for like a box at times. It's just insane, and just it's just really crazy. But I mean, it was quite short lived, that, to be fair. Maybe like a week or two, and we were okay. You know, we were able to buy it again in certain shops. But people were just bulk buying it and then selling it on at a raised price, almost like scalping in times of a crisis. Like,
Jeez.
just this really like selfish sort of.
That's so bizarre
Yeah.
too, because it's not like it was a mass shortage of chocolate. It was like baby formula that you had to
Yeah.
have for a baby, versus something that like people just wanted. Like I know like computer components were super hard to get for a while, webcams and things that people needed to work from home. But when it comes down to something essential as baby formula, I would have freaked out. How did you like? So did you just like panic, or did you just pay what you had to pay, or did you have people get it for you, or what did you do? Because that sounds like, if it's something you literally needed, that's that's terrifying to me, especially as a new dad. I know you have a couple other kids, but like if I was a dad for the first time during COVID and I couldn't get baby formula, I seriously would be, I'd literally be freaking out. I'm freaking out at the idea of it.
It's a lot of like scouring the internet and just trying to find somewhere with some available. But like I said, it was quite short lived. So
Nice. That's good at least.
Yeah.
It's difficult in the UK as well, because we did have a lot of panic buying, and it was the same sort of products: pasta, canned goods, toilet roll.
Pasta,
but
beans, and toilet roll. Like, what are you making with all of that?
But I mean, and Mike will sort of back me up on this. The problem with the UK is that we unfortunately are a very panic buy nation. If the minute the news says there's going to be a bit of snow, people will go out and panic buy, and through the fear that they could be locked into their house for more than a day. It's honestly ridiculous the amount of panic buying that goes on in this country at times, and obviously that was turned up to 11 with COVID and the lockdown. Even though the government from day one stated that the big supermarkets wouldn't be shutting, that there wouldn't be a shortage, that we'd still be able to get stock in, yet people just absolutely went mad. And the big thing that I can get hold of was bloody cat food. Ridiculous. Cat food was so there were certain types of cat food, but my cats are picky. It's so picky, and the food that they want, just I couldn't get it for months. It was so annoying.
You should have been like, listen here, cat, there's a national worldwide pandemic. You're gonna eat whatever you can eat, and you're gonna like it.
You've got a cat, you know that they are stuck up their own arse and they do what they want.
That is true, but my cat would eat any food that's in front of her because she's a little chonk and doesn't care about anything. All right, moving on. So, since you guys had a national lockdown and we didn't, we were still able to go pretty much anywhere we wanted whenever we wanted to, and it wasn't until probably June or July at least, maybe even August, when people here really started to understand that people had to wear masks. We weren't that concerned until it started to get much more real, probably about when school started again, because that's when we all kind of had to face the fact. So my wife's a teacher and I work at a school. So at that point, you're about to be exposed to 1,000 different people a day and their kids, which is terrifying, because why would a 10-year-old kid want to wear a mask all day? You know he's not going to keep it on. I remember seeing a meme when school started during COVID, and it's like, you know for a fact that 8-year-old boy is going to go to school with a Paw Patrol mask and come back wearing a Spider-Man mask because he traded it with some kid. And I'm like, this is how COVID's going to keep going on for a very long time. So then what happened was at my school, we had a staff member that died of COVID. and it was a huge
Wow.
shock to the whole system. They didn't know of any like pre-existing conditions or anything. It was just like this killed somebody, and so it got really intense at that point. And we're like, oh man, like we're not going anywhere anymore. We're wearing our masks 100%. We're washing our hands, and we're gonna make sure we stay away from like our loved ones as much as possible, which sounds horrible, but we'll Zoom with them, we'll talk with them. But that's when it started to get really terrifying. Was there a point for you guys where you really were like, okay, this shit's serious and it's not going away soon? Was there like a realization where you're just like, all right, we're in this for the long haul? What was that moment like?
Mike, do you want to start?
Yeah, so for me, it didn't really get so real until I had like friends getting it, and then it was sort of like, oh shit, you know, it's here, like it's affecting my circle of friends, and
Yeah.
I know that's pretty kind of like a sort of selfish view, but yeah, it's just as soon as like I had close friends getting it, and you know their family getting it, it was like, whoa, you know, time to get a bit serious with this.
Yeah.
And I like,
Yeah,
I know-
we were.
yeah, go on, Shane. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah. I mean, we were taking it pretty serious from the word go. To be honest, my other half was adamant on as soon as you get in from being out in the public, you shower, you like take your clothes off, shower immediately. We were wearing masks from pretty much from day one. Yeah, so we were taking it. Not, I wouldn't say we were like the most serious people out there, but we were taking it semi-seriously. There were still things that, yeah, granted, like everyone, that we probably could have not done, but on the whole, I think we were sort of like 80% to where we should have been at the time. But yeah, I mean, it didn't. Although, like you're saying, it's like, oh, do you take it seriously or not? It didn't. Although I was taking it seriously, it didn't really hit home as to how really damaging it was. And I think, and I don't know if Mike, you felt the same. It was more when it's come back round this second time in the winter, because the
Worse.
summer,
Yeah.
the summer, I didn't know anyone in the summer who had it. Like it was just
That's
this.
all I mean. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was just this mysterious bug that no one has. This mysterious virus that's going around that no one seems to have. But then this winter, like this since November, it's just been. It feels like everyone I've known has had it at some point, or been close to someone who's had it. And there was a fellow I used to work with that I haven't spoken to in years, but I found out that he actually passed away just after Christmas. And he was only 36, so he was only 5 years older than me. No pre-existing conditions, had 4 kids, just caught ill, and within a few weeks was unfortunately died from it. And that's when it really hit me, and I was like, oh fuck, oh, that guy's 5 years older than me.
Yeah. Definitely. I think as soon as you start to know people that got it, I know I got exposed at a pretty early point in the summer, I think it was. We were at a fire with some of my friends, like a bonfire in their backyard, and we found out a couple days the next morning after the bonfire, we got a text saying, oh yeah, I just found out I'm COVID positive. You guys should all get tested. And we're like, what? Have either of you guys had COVID tests?
I think you've had one and I've had one.
I get tested every week now. Yeah.
Do you get the nose swab or the throat swab?
Both.
Both.
Oof. I've only had to do the nose
And
one,
then-
but it's not fun.
And then I also thank the guy on the way out. Thanks for that.
Call
See you
me.
next week.
Yeah. It's the nose swab is super weird because it's like, oh yeah, we're just gonna do this little Q-tip thing in your nose, and then they like keep going. You're like, oh, that's Shirley, and they're like, oh no, keep going. And you're like, by the time you're done with it, I felt like I needed like a cold shower and somebody to talk to, because like your throat hurts and like you just feel violated. It's super awkward. Not to mention, this is one of the weirdest parts, and I think this might be on the list. I feel like we're jumping all over the place, but we'll get some structure. When you went, for us at least, we had drive-in testing sites, drive-through testing sites, but they looked like something out of the movie E.T. because there's like these white tents that are set up in parking lots. There's these traffic cones in these parking lots with these signs that say like, enter here. And then you pull in your car, and then there's a sign that says, have your phone out with the QR code ready to be scanned, but keep your window rolled up. And you're like, okay, fine. You pull up, and then there's these people wearing camouflage that are in the military, and they're like yelling at you to like show them your phone. You show them your phone, and then they tell you to go back up. So you go up, and then you're like surrounded by these people in like hazmat suits with gloves on, these face shields. You're like, what the hell is happening? And then they tell you to roll down your window. They hand you 2 Kleenex tissues, tell you to blow your nose. And then they don't even take the dirty tissues. You just have to set it in the car seat next to you. And they're like, oh, are you ready for this? I'm like, no, just do it anyway. So then they're like, swab one side. And you're like, ah. And then they're like, okay, are you ready for the other side? I'm like, just f me up. And then they do the other side. And you're like, all right, great. And they're like, we'll call you. I'm like, okay, great. So then I had to wait like 3 days to find out, yep, you're COVID negative. I'm like, awesome. I don't want to do that ever again. Just
well, at least your driving centres though sound fairly efficient and professional. No word of a lie. The one I went to was the road that it was part of the like road around the back of a hospital. It was all owned by the hospital, and it was literally just 3 nurses, a table, and a clipboard. That was it. Just there's this table with some paperwork on it, 2 female nurses and a male nurse, a clipboard, and the male nurses came over, shoved it up my nose, shoved it down my throat, ticked my name off, and then went, yeah, off you go.
Were any of them filming at the time?
Let's rephrase this. Okay, so our testing site was just much more American, like high strung. We had the military there for no reason, and everybody looked like we were, I don't even know what, patient zero. But really, it was just a cotton swab to the nose, and then you have to wait 3 days to do it, or to find out.
Yeah. I just had 3 nurses that looked like they wanted to have a coffee. That was it. They were just staying around like, why are we out here?
It definitely was, and we'll get into
three British nurses doing the job of the entire US military.
It definitely was one of those moments though, the getting tested. I was super anxious. Like I'm kind of an anxious person in general, not super anxious, but the fact that I had to like go to this weird site and figure out what to do, and they were all very high strung and taking it incredibly seriously, as it should be. But I was just like, where do I go? What do I do? What's this going to feel like? And am I going to have COVID? Because at the beginning, I feel like, I don't know about you guys, but in the beginning, it didn't sound like a super serious, like people thought it was like the flu, like we said earlier. So at that point, I was just like, if I get COVID and get it over with, that would probably be okay at this point. Was there any point where you guys, I don't know where I'm going with this. I lost my train of thought.
Well, just off the back of the comment you were while you were trying to regain your train of thought, on the back of the comment about the anxiousness, and I'm curious to whether Mike feels the same way around this, because I don't know what your rules are in America with it, but particularly in the early days, there was definitely an anxiousness and like a fear and an anxiety around having to isolate. And now I'm like, oh, I'll have to isolate again. Oh well. Like now it doesn't. If I have to isolate, if I got told tomorrow that I've got to isolate for 7 days, I'm literally not fussed. I don't leave the house anyway.
I'd be like, yes, finally, I get to stay home again.
Yeah, whereas back in the summer, it like the concept of having to isolate for 10 or 14 days was terrifying. This idea that I wasn't allowed to leave the house for 10 days was an absolutely like terrifying concept. And now it's just like, okay.
Ours was 14. No worries. Ours was 14 days at first, and then it went to 10.
Yeah, same.
But that's actually a good transition to the next thought. What have you guys? So, are you guys? Do you consider yourself anxious people? Like in general, I know that's kind of a huge statement, but like
you're gonna get 2 very different answers here.
I know I am. That's why I'm asking. Mike, you go first.
I'm not at all.
So for me, I'm not usually, but I think with like the COVID situation, as well being like a new parent to a young baby, like the anxiety levels have just like elevated so much during this lockdown and stuff that, you know, I've had to have like counseling and things like that, and get like meditation apps and try those, try all these like new different techniques to sort of get on top of it and you know, just try and manage it more. I think this goes back to sort of how serious were we taking it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the more we understand of it now, the more sort of serious we take it, I think. like sort of the midpoint was where it was like I didn't really understand it, and you know, it was like the fear of the unknown, like you said, and as it's becoming like close to the end, hopefully, you know, I kind of have a clearer idea of like the effects that it'll have and things like that, and sort of it seems like we have an end in sight now with the vaccine. So you know, it's just it's kind of like the anxiety is lessened for me personally.
Let's kind of hop into the main question of this episode, which is, what has COVID really taught you about yourself? So for me, I think I've learned that, yep, I'm kind of an anxious person. And I also think that social interaction is pretty important for me in terms of, I mean, I live with my fiance during the start of COVID. We're married now, but so like I always had one person that I know that I want to spend time with usually. So that wasn't like a super big deal. I know some people, like even my grandpa, he lives by himself now, and he was having a tough time during COVID because he could not leave his house. So for him, I also realized too that most people have different ways of operating, and some people really need that physical, not even necessarily physical, that interaction. So we were doing weekly, if not a couple times a week, Zoom calls with family members. We have lots of small kids that are in my family now, but like we're missing out on a lot of stuff with them right now because of COVID. We haven't seen them in a long time. I haven't even seen my parents very much. I've seen my grandpa maybe twice since COVID started in person. It's a weird thing, but especially for them, like I knew even if I didn't want to sit on a Zoom call for 2 hours at night, I knew I was going to do it because they needed it. So that was something I learned about them, is that's something they actually needed. So was there anything that happened during COVID where you guys kind of changed your regular routine to accommodate your new needs or the needs of others? Like I know even just the way we met, we all were looking for a community of people in gaming, really, because that's kind of what, I mean, you guys were on lockdown, and I don't know if you guys didn't work for a while or what, but gaming was a thing that we could do all the time. And even though you guys live 4,000 miles away, I think it's 4,000. I looked it up one time, 4,000 miles away, we were able to kind of be a part of this community where we met. I don't know, I've probably met 10 to 15 new people that I talk to more often than my friends in real life. So that was one way that I kind of met new people, but also kept my sanity during COVID.
I mean, yeah, it's exactly the same for me. If it wasn't for sort of the Discords that we're in and you know, the communities and stuff, I think I'd just be sort of almost on my own kind of thing. Obviously, I'm with Ellie and everything, but you know.
But
thought about her.
I can edit that part out.
But yeah, you know, she's happy with her new Hoover and stuff. So yeah, I need some friends. So yeah, I'm pretty grateful for that through COVID. It's like making new friends and me and everyone of you guys and stuff. Yeah.
It does make saying with what you were saying, Cheese, about then as well. It does make me chuckle, and I thought about this before. In that, like when particularly with Mike, I've known Mac, for example, and Ryan. Mac's the best part of my life. Like I think me and him have been going to school with each other since we were like 9, and I'm pretty sure there's pictures of me and him at a younger age together. Like I've known him literally well over 20 years. And I actually speak to Mike more than I speak to Max at the moment.
Yeah.
I don't think a day goes past where we don't send each other something.
I think that's kind of the way with
fucking
all,
mad.
yeah, with most of us, even at least in Discords and stuff, Snapchats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is crazy. But it's going to sound a bit shitty, but I don't really think I've learned much, to be honest. I think if anything, I've learned that I actually don't need to be. I'm not that much of a social creature. I could quite happily. I know I speak to Mike like most days, but I'm not massively active in the Discord, mostly because I'm busy a lot. And I can go a good 3 or 4 days without really talking to anyone bar Lauren and be quite comfortable. I'm just quite comfortable with all that sort of thing. I'm quite comfortable in my own head, and I think that's a big thing. is that I'm quite comfortable and safe in my own head. I don't get lost in my own thoughts, and I'm quite comfortable just to spend time with myself. The only thing I've really sort of learned that I've missed is my sister has one child who's 3, and I've always, because of my particularly my mum's side of the family, which is the side of the family like I've always there's always had more of a focus on. My uncle basically had no involvement in mine or my sister's life, and I've always said like I want to make sure I have an involvement in his life, like my nephew's life, and not being able to see him for like 8 months is that's been unpleasant.
Yeah, that is tough, because I'm kind of the same way. Like, we don't have any kids yet, and I don't think we will for a while, but like, I love being the uncle because I can kind of, you get to play with the kids, and then they go home. If there's something wrong, if they need a diaper change, they start crying, you call for the parent. That's kind of it. But like, we haven't got to do that. And like, my nieces and nephews are starting to get to the really fun ages where they're like 2.5, or even just a year. So like my twin brother, his kid's 9 months old now, and she's starting to kind of like babble to the point where it's slightly coherent, and you're like, oh, she's saying shit now. Like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And she can like stand up and kind of hold herself up and not fall. But it's just like, it seems like we're missing out on so much. But at the same time, like you said, you don't feel like you need that interaction so much in terms of like going out. But I think interaction in general has just changed. There's going to be so much now, like the way we're having this conversation right now versus if I had a couple people over here to interview in my office. Like, this is just the way things are going to be now. We're being able to see my family that lives spread throughout the US just by clicking a couple buttons and having a Zoom conversation for an hour. Like, everything's kind of changed a little bit. And I think I've realized that I need interaction, but that doesn't mean I have to go places, which is kind of a cool thing, because how many times have we had a game night where, I mean, those are so much fun, just digitally, worldwide, literally playing games online versus me having to go out to eat with a couple of buddies and spending a bunch of money. Like, interaction is just changing to the point where if you know the people that you want to spend your time with, hang out with, talk to, you really don't have to go anywhere. And yeah, before you could send Snapchats and texts to your best friends that you know in real life and hang out with, but that's all kind of changed. Even online gaming has kind of changed because it's so easy to meet other people. Streaming is a whole different component versus like playing Halo 1 or Halo 2 or 3 on Xbox Live with random people. Like, you can literally meet strangers and be friends with them, which sounds weird in a very broad statement, but here we are having this conversation with 2 people that live 4,000 miles away from me, and you guys have never even met each other.
No.
And there's 2 things I want to raise. So when you were talking about your nephews and nieces and that, the thing that really like almost tore me up was, and Mike, I think you'll know what I'm talking about, like where he was 3 last August. Last Christmas was like the first real Christmas where he really understood what was happening. Like, he understood his own presents and he could open them himself, and he knew what they were. It wasn't just like when they're sort of 1 or 2, they know they're getting stuff, but they don't really comprehend what it is they're getting.
Yeah, they're not as excited.
Yeah, and having to stand like nearly like 5 foot away in my sister's garden in my coat in the rain and watch him open presents in the doorway.
Yeah.
was just heartbreaking. Like, like knowing that I couldn't see all these toys that I bought to go and play with him, and I couldn't do anything but just watch him open them from the doorway. But with you two, onto your next point, so I don't want to drag the conversation back. I think that's the reason why I found it so easy, to be honest, because even pre-COVID, because of our busy lives and the age we're at, between saving money for weddings and children and all having busy jobs, even the friends that I know in person, I only really speak to them on online games and via these sort of conversations anyway. It may be that I see them once a month in person, but more often than not, like I say, Max lives no more than a 20-minute car ride away, yet I will speak to him more on WhatsApp and on the PlayStation than I will in any other method. Ryan's within walking distance of my house, yet again in person I might see him once a month, and that was before COVID. I think that's why I found the transition so easy, because I'm just so used to this method of communication.
I think maybe the most fascinating part of all of that is, like, I agree with you completely. Some of my best friends in real life, I spend more time talking to through Discord playing video games than any other thing too. But the fact that I randomly found a group like you guys that I think I fit in with really, really well during a time where social interaction and talking to people and like just not getting stuck in your own head, if you are like that, like, that's bizarre. Like, I'm not even kidding that my top Snapchat friends are Mike and Ellie, and then Hazy, and there's somebody else from that group, maybe Snezza even. It's like, that is so wild to me that like your guys' whole group is pretty well refined. Like, it really is. And I've seen plenty of outsiders come and go without really sticking. And somehow, just because I joined that group and I made a couple of jokes and a couple of memes, 10 months later, here we are having a conversation with people that I talk to all the time. Like, that's just beyond crazy, especially because it's not like you guys live across the street and are mutual friends with somebody I know. It's like 100% total happenstance that we're having this conversation in the first place. That's crazy.
Oh yeah, and I think about this sort of stuff all the time, like the probability of something happening, the chances, and I think back to the fact that, like,
according to your Excel spreadsheet.
Well, no, but I just think back, and it's like the only reason that I have met any of you was just a one-off random August afternoon that Hazy came into one of my first ever streams, got chatting to her, and then somewhere across the next couple of months happened to chat to Mike, and we just like clicked straight away. And it's just like, when you look at that series of events to then get us to the point now where me and Mike run a podcast together, and we like have a group, the Triple XP group, who we're so close, plus all the people that are in Mike's personal Discord, like, just those, it's almost like the perfect domino effect, and you just couldn't plan that in any way, shape or form. Like, the way it's happened, is the probability of that is just incredible.
And that's awesome, because it's like, I mean, I honestly see you guys as lifelong friends because we met each other around interests. It's not like somebody that I happen to be friends with in high school and then we kind of like just stopped being friends. Like, I don't see that happening. If anything, like, conversations like this are going to get us to know each other even more. And that's going to just kind of make everything strengthen a little bit, because it doesn't really matter if we agree or disagree. We all are very open-minded. Jedi's a perfect example of this too. Like, I've played games with him outside of the Discord groups, just one-on-one. And it's like, if you can have a respectful conversation, thinking back to like even like the presidential election without getting political, if you can have a conversation about politics and have an actual conversation where you can explain your side and you can explain their side, and then you guys can kind of just like discuss versus argue. That's the whole point of this podcast, is to have conversations about things we either don't have any idea about or we know we disagree about, and just have like a respectful conversation. And I think even though gaming brought us all together, we're not going to agree on everything, and that's totally fine. But
no,
I also don't see us arguing.
No, comically, obviously with like you, Jedi, Sarah, everyone in that group, like it's all positivity that's brought us so close together. Whereas what brought me and Mike together was a mutiny. So we led a Discord mutiny together, and that was like the least positive thing we've ever done in Discord.
But look where you are now.
Oh, it was comical times.
All right. Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, like, sort of going back to what you were saying about speaking to people in Discord and stuff more than you do, you know, your real life friends. It's like, it's kind of knowing that they'll always be there to have those same conversations, and you know, it's all meeting on mutual ground and talking about things that you all love together, like as a community. It's just that's why I think I speak to everyone in the sort of Discords and online more than I do my real life friends. Like that'll text or anything.
And this is something I've always thought too, and like this goes back to like this is gonna sound funny, but like my days on Tumblr talking to people. But like there's something about talking to people you don't know, even if you're having a hard time. Like if you saw somebody post like, yeah, I'm having a really tough time, I wish somebody would like I had somebody to talk to, you'd probably reach out to them and be like, hey, if you need to talk, I'm here to talk to you. But that says something, because like there's no preconceived notions or judgment when you're talking to a stranger. Like they don't know anything about you. And I think that was one of the things I realized about like our friend group pretty early on, whether it was Mike or Jedi or somebody else even, I can't remember who. Like if I posted a tweet that sounded even vaguely upset or depressed, you guys would send me a message and be like, hey man, if you need to talk, let me know. Yeah. We can hang out, we can play a game, whatever you need to do to just kind of let go, relax, work something out. Like that's a big deal to me, at least. And I think that's a big deal to a lot of people, because some people, I think even in our group, internalize things. It's like, talk it out, even if it's just to one of us for 5 minutes. Like if that's what you need to do to get out of your own head and kind of work through it, do it. And that's something that's really important for friend groups, because in real life friends will not do that. Nobody's in life friends really do that. Like that's just kind of how it works. It's kind of weird. You're like, well, why are you trying to bring us all down, man? Like just finish your beer and let's watch the game. Like it's not what you do. So it's kind of cool to have two different sides of friends where it's just very different and the same at the same time, which is weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like you say, like, I mean, as I'm sure, as you've already said, Cheese, and I know Mike considers this as well, like you guys are all friends for life. Like it's, I know that if I have to disappear suddenly for a month or 2 months, or even if I had to drop off of the face of the earth for 6 months, when I come back in 6 months' time, you're going to be there, and it'll be like nothing's changed.
Yep.
Because we've just all become that close over this last year or however long it's been.
I mean, we just all
time hurts my brain now. It doesn't exist.
Right. It's just funny because we all have the same sense of humor, it seems, in our entire friend group, the Discord group, because our senses of humor are very, very specific Dark. And no holds barred at all. Like I have a couple of friends where I can send some terrible memes, but you guys, I couldn't show that to anybody without people being like, whoa. It's a whole different level, but it's awesome.
Yeah, there's a reason nothing ever gets saved on my phone.
Yeah, I just don't open Discord at work anymore. All right. At this point, we're going to transition into a couple of questions. We're going to take a break from the main conversation. We're going to answer a couple of questions that people have sent me on Twitter. And then after that, we'll segue back into the rest of the conversation. And some of these questions might even help us do that. So the first question I got was, what are your thoughts on Florida and how it has, or rather hasn't, handled COVID? So,
I mean, I'll start with this one. I don't know how much Mike has followed how Florida has handled it, but I have no idea how they've handled it, so I can't answer.
That's why I was like, why are you starting? I was going to start.
I haven't got a clue, and I imagine Mike is exactly the same.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know about Florida specifically, but
I don't either.
I thought, Cheese, if I start, it'll get me and Mike out the way in this one, because we've got nothing to add.
I thought you were going to say, I don't know who Florida is or anything about her, but so I think what happened was, and I could be wrong, but I won't talk about Florida specifically because I don't know anything about Florida, how it's handled it. I think I do, but I'm not going to speculate. That'd be not a good idea.
Didn't Florida, if I remember, because I do try to keep up to date with the news of the world, but didn't Florida at one point have the highest death rate or like infection rate at one point quite early on, very quickly?
Maybe, but I think Florida was more in the news because I think they were going to be the ones to allow fans to still attend massive sporting events. I think that was the thing. I don't know what this person's referring to specifically, so we can always touch on it again. I've said this before. I think we could probably do a couple episodes on COVID, and we might have to because there's so much we haven't gotten into. And we still have
I feel like this person may need to come back with a slightly more clarified question.
Yeah, but what I can add is even in Iowa, our governor handled it very, very, very differently than everybody else. Iowa was the first state in the entire United States that allowed high school baseball and softball to be played. That was a huge deal. Like, that literally made national news because we were the only state in the country playing sports. Didn't go so great for some schools, but it did for others. It was just kind of a step towards a back to normal lifestyle. And so then for a while, we didn't even have a mask mandate. Actually, we've never had a true mask mandate. It was always left up to the discretion of businesses and stuff. So like when I'd get a tattoo, we didn't have to wear masks the first time, but then when I went back for another tattoo, we had to. So different states have handled it differently. I know my state has not done a fantastic job, and there's been a lot of scrutiny because of that, especially at a national level. But
I was just going to say, I genuinely think that in the UK, that you talk about the mask mandate, I think that even after COVID, that's not something that's going to go away for a while.
I agree.
I think it's going to be a case of like, not obviously everywhere, but I think public transport and shops, it's going to be sort of an expectation for the next few years. I think that'll be in place.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. But I was just going to say about sort of how government, like our government had handled things. Just to bring it to sort of my local area, we, like the UK, introduced a tier system, and it had a tier 2 and a tier 3. So tier 3 was almost like full lockdown, you know, don't leave your house unless it's for essentials.
Yeah.
That was me.
Tier 3, baby. But as they were like regionalizing it, it was by postcode. So you'd have one area that was sort of tier 3 and then another area that was tier 3. And just because of the way the borders are in my area, my side of the road was tier 2 and then the other side of the road was tier 3.
That's
So
crazy.
just like no sense whatsoever. So yeah, it's just crazy. This is a little thing like that, but yeah, it wasn't handled very well.
I think
No.
that's kind of where it comes back to is my cat. Sorry. If everybody would have just handled it differently though, like who knows at what point we'd be at. I think vaccines is still obviously maybe the final. Well, hopefully the final step, but
Yeah.
I just feel like there's so many people that could have not died or gotten sick, or so many shops that could have stayed open because of business
Yeah.
being weird. Like,
And
just if it was handled differently from the start, or at least
Yeah.
at a national level where everybody had the same standards to follow, and kind of just like you're required to wear a mask, and if you don't, no service, or you get fined or something. Like, I know that's harder to enforce, but it's just like we never had that giant blanket statement of these are the rules and you got to follow them to be safe.
see, that's something we did have, and we do very much have a blanket statement of these are the rules. You will wear a mask when you go out. You will do X, Y, Z. You obviously there's certain things that are quite hard to enforce, like you can't meet more than one household outside. So unless if you're in a massive group, it's not necessarily obvious that you're meeting more than one household outside. If there's 3 people together, all from a different household, how are you ever going to tell that they're from a different household? But personally, I felt the tier system worked on the whole, although it did have its issues here and there. Like Mike was saying, I think the big problem we had is that as soon as we came out of that first lockdown, we should have gone straight into a tier system. And the government should have just reacted faster. I think that was our biggest issue, is that our government was just reacting far too slow to the information they had. And I know loads of people right now are complaining that they're in lockdown, but because I was tier 3, I've basically been in lockdown since November anyway. Like, it doesn't feel any different to what tier 3 was. And I think if they had reacted quicker earlier, we may not be in the length of lockdown we're in now. Because what has it been, 2 months? 3 months?
Too long.
Literally. But I mean, it's pleasing that our government has at least put out some. Not all of the rules are clear, but they have put out some clear rules. As in, the mask stuff is pretty clear.
Yeah. All right. The next question. What has this situation taught you about people that you know? I know a lot of people that complain about the pandemic but eat out at restaurants every night instead of just picking up food and taking it home. It irks me. I'll go first. I think at least with my friend group, my in real life friend group, I haven't really learned much about them so much compared to like strangers. I think it's the same with anything really, that you're not gonna always have the same viewpoints on things, and you can't really control what they do. Like how many times have you seen like the Costco Karen video where like the lady throws a fit or lays on the ground or gets dragged out or whatever? People will never change their ways, even if it's for the safety of others. That ultimately is what it comes down to. It's super annoying. It's super frustrating. It's super disappointing, but there's really nothing you can do about those people but try to keep them away from your life and try to not let their negativity affect you. And that's really what I think I've learned, is just some people just suck. That's it. That's really all you can say about it.
I mean, I think there's an element here where we've got to be careful not to tar everyone with the same brush. Yeah. There is definitely going to be a selection of people out there that just don't give a shit. They don't care about other people and they just want to do their thing.
Yeah.
But there's also going to be a lot of people out there that are doing stuff that us three may find pointless and ridiculous, that for them is something that's key to, say, their mental health or to their own personal standards. For example, I know a lot of the girls that are at my work, when the lockdown ended and before coming into the lockdown, one of the big things for them was like the ability to go get their lashes done and go get their nails done.
Yeah.
And for us, we're looking at that going, well, it's a complete waste of time. Like, you're putting people at risk for that. But that's a huge thing for them, for their own like personal view of themselves. And we know how difficult it is, particularly for young women, to like be happy with their bodies.
Yeah.
And that's something that obviously massively helps their mental health. So I think we need to be careful with like obviously tarring everyone with the same brush, because there's going to be different reasons for different things. But yes, there's definitely going to be some dickheads out there.
Yeah, I think I specifically meant like the people who went to the store and threw a fit about having to wear a mask. Those people who like were given a rule and said, if you don't do it, you got to leave, and then they threw a fit. I know there's definitely all sorts of cases where people will try to do things that they felt like they needed to do for their own mental health. I totally agree with that. I also think the issue with some of those people is just not knowing the facts, like not being educated 100%. About the newest studies, or even knowing the first 100%. Studies, or just misunderstanding. So there are definitely some people that I think are good people and need just to be told some facts, versus the people who are difficult because they're bad people.
I genuinely think that a bit like we have, so I don't know what your equivalent is in America, but we have like the blue badge holders. So it basically means you can park in a disabled space. It means you've got a disability.
Yeah, we have handicap parking is what we call it.
Yeah, so they've got like a special badge that shows that they're allowed to park in those spaces.
Yep.
I genuinely think like moving forward, there should be like a medical exemption card. Like if you want to claim that you can't wear a mask due to medical exemption, you need to have a card that states from your doctor that you are medically exempt.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I could walk into shop tomorrow and be like, yeah, I'm medically exempt.
Yeah.
What can you do about it? Like,
yeah. There's no shortage of arrogance, definitely during times like this too, where there's rules to be followed, and if you don't, then
they do sort of have like a exemption lanyard thing.
Do they?
But you can literally buy them on Amazon for like £2.
I was gonna say I could probably Photoshop one together in about 2 minutes. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, next question comes from our pal Corellian Jedi. How have your friendships been affected by COVID? Any situations of difference in masks or safety procedures cause arguments or rifts? Has this brought you any closer to your friends? For a while, we were doing game nights, kind of like we do with the not real life friends, which makes it sound like you're not friends at all. But we did game nights. We did that kind of stuff. It's just, I don't know. I think we got maybe closer because we're like, we all need some level of social interaction. So like lately, even so my birthday's coming up and we're trying to figure out what to do. It's like, well, we could probably go out to eat. You got to wear masks. There's limited capacity. At that point, we should be okay. But it's kind of just like, we have to keep our plans very fluid. We have to understand if somebody's not feeling well, that they shouldn't be involved. But we also just all kind of realized, yeah, we kind of need to hang out sometimes. Whatever we got to do to make that happen.
Yeah, Mike, did you want to?
Yeah, I don't think for me there's been any sort of rifts or arguments for COVID, so I can't really state on that. But you know, there are like positive elements where, you know, like you said about game nights and things like that, we are doing more of those. So we're sort of hanging out more because of these restrictions, and then when we do sort of get together and we can get together, it's you know, it's more appreciated, and you know, you kind of realize what you're sort of missing.
Yeah. Shane?
Yeah, like Mike, there's been no rifts really. Someone may have done something stupid and I just told them they've done something stupid and then we move on with our lives. But no real rifts. I mean, there are friends that I've definitely drifted apart from, but I wouldn't say that's necessarily linked to COVID. I think friendships throughout your life are fluid anyway. There's always going to be people that you're drifting apart from anyway. It just happens that it's happened during COVID, as opposed to it was probably going to happen either way. What I have found though is that actually people, I've got a lot closer to my friends, whether it be you guys who, like you say, we're all very far apart, or whether it be people that live close to me. I'm a lot closer to them now. We speak a lot more than we used to. But I've also been in contact with people that I've not spoken to in 10, 15 years, because nothing brings people closer together than something unpleasant and negative. And like one of my closest friends in school messaged me completely out of the blue, just to say, oh, hey man, like, how are you getting on with COVID? Like, everything all right? You coping all right? Just that sort of stuff. And I've just been chatting to people that I haven't chatted to in a long time, just because of that concern to make sure that everyone's okay.
Yeah, we had that quite a bit in the beginning. I know my wife struggled a little bit from the very beginning. Just like the idea of being trapped in your house took more of a toll on her than it would have affected most people, because obviously you can still go outside, you can go for walks, you can go for a drive, we could go to the store if we needed to. But for a while, at least in the very beginning, which that's when there was lots of unknown information out there, it was very important to her to like reach out and FaceTime people and send messages to people, FaceTime her cousins that live across the country. It's just, some people really needed that, especially from the get-go, when they felt like they were isolated, which we all were isolated, but like some people, even if you're with other people, you feel isolated on your own. And that was definitely an important thing. But I had some friends too that I haven't talked to in a long time reach out to me and just say like, hey, hopefully after COVID, when it's all over, we can go have a beer and catch up. And that meant a lot to me. I mean, there's some people that I think, like you kind of alluded to, Shane, like if you dropped off the face of the earth for 6 months and came back in, you would have so many memes to catch up on. You'd have thousands of messages to catch up on. But like, we'd be like, hey, he's back finally. And then we just like record an episode of something or play a game. But that happens in real life too. There's people that I haven't talked to since high school 10 years ago. And if they sent me a message right now or called me, I'd answer it and be like, hey, how are you, man? Like, it's been a long time, but like, why'd we stop being friends? Like it sometimes it just happens. Like, you're still friends if you see him at a bar, all of a sudden you just kind of revert right back to that like chummy high school humor. And then sometimes people just go on with their lives and you're not always included, and that happens. But COVID is definitely kind of I bet it's done that for a lot of people. Just those one-off messages definitely saying, hey, how's it going? Or are you okay? How's your family? Do you need anything? Or how are you holding up? Especially if you know people struggle with mental illness, or they have a rough home life, or they're just having a tough time. Those messages are super important to people.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we also have to remember that it's easy to forget that although we're all in the same situation, we're not. For example, I live in a fairly decent sized house. There's enough room for me and Lauren to go off and do our own thing within the house and not get in each other's way all the time. But we also have quite a nice garden that we can spend a lot of time in, and we have spent a lot of time in. I've got a dog, so I've got a reason to go out walking every day. I've got a reason to go outside and spend an hour just walking around every day. And it's easy to forget that there are people that, for example, live on their own in a little one-bedroom flat with no garden, no real reason to need to go outside. And it must be so much harder for them because I've got things to occupy my mind with, whereas in that situation, it's a lot more difficult to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I work in sort of a private healthcare, and I see sort of a lot of old people day to day, and I'll be the only person that they see that day or that week, or the trip to the the optician or whatever might be the only bit of company they get for like a few days, because they just live on their own. So yeah, I mean, I sort of see that as part of the job is being there for that person and sort of having that element of care and just being there as like a friend to talk to.
Yeah.
At the very least, I think it's just part of the job. So whether you're having a bad day or not, it's kind of irrelevant. You don't bring it into it. It's just the healthcare that you give, sort of thing. So,
it's being a human at that point.
I was going to say, it's also just part of being a good human being.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I know even when I worked in retail for a long time, and there was just some people that you could tell. I mean, I think all older people in general, whether it's somebody you know or not, like they're usually relatively alone, and COVID or not, like you should just be respectful. You should be respectful to everybody, but those older people, sometimes they need it, and sometimes they are the most clueless when they come in. They're like, "Oh yeah, I need an Xbox cartridge for a PlayStation." You're like, "What?" But like, it's happened. I've had people say that to me, and you're like, "Oh yeah, right this way," and you figure it out. They don't know what they're talking about. It doesn't matter, but that interaction for them is important, and they'll probably remember it, and you're surely going to remember it because you made somebody's day. So that's important, COVID or not, but especially during COVID, I think.
Yeah.
Cat,
nice.
you have to go away. My cat is all over the place. Go away. All right, last question from Twitter, and this one is a little less COVID serious. If you could be any cheese, what would it be? I'm not going first. Shane, you're first. Any cheese and why?
This is a tough one.
I should have assigned you. I should have told you what I think you should be.
I'm going to go with one of my favorite cheeses.
Let me throw in a disclaimer quick though, because as an American, my cheese palate is trash. We are very limited. There's about 10 cheeses, maybe 10, that are like, oh yeah, you go to the store and you can find these. Knowing you guys, I've had to look up and try to figure out what the hell you're talking about, because we don't have those cheeses here, or they're not cheap, or they're not easily accessible. So, all right, now you can go on.
Right, let me just find out what its official name is.
All right, Mike, you go first then, while Shane does his spreadsheeting.
Just pull up his cheese spreadsheet real quick.
He's got the whole dictionary in a spreadsheet. It's easier that way.
No, it's okay. I've got it. So one of my favourite cheeses is Austrian smoked cheese. It's the one that comes, like Michael now I'm talking about. It comes in like a log.
Little sausage.
It's literally like a little cheese sausage. It's great to just munch away. I mean, when you say
cheese.
That, and why are you the little cheese sausage? Why that one?
It's just a solid cheese, great taste. It's one of the few cheeses that I can comfortably eat without, I can literally just take a bite out of that and enjoy it just on its own without having to worry about putting it with something.
How does that relate to your personality?
It doesn't. It's just a nice cheese.
Okay, fair enough. Mike, you're up.
I mean,
you're gonna say halloumi, aren't you?
Cheese for a day. I was gonna pick halloumi, but just because I relate to being a delicious squeaky meat cheese. Um, but
which
I think my
we do
favourite-
not have here. We can get it, but it's incredibly expensive. So is your halloumi there? Is it goat cheese, or is it multiple?
Sure.
I think it could be, yeah. Maybe.
I think here it's
don't know.
goat, but I think it can be made from several different animals' milk.
I mean, I've got some
Yeah.
in the fridge if you want me to go and check.
I would say that if I was any cheese, I would be a pepper jack cheese, where there's a little bit of spice, but relatively you're plain and easy to acquire. Like it's just kind of like an everyday cheese. I'm nothing super fancy. I don't have like a rind or anything, but I'm also not like a little cheese log.
What is the fanciest cheese
good
that you
question.
have access to?
The fanciest cheese, or like the most common fancy cheese? Because that would be like
Well, if you were to go to your supermarket or whatever the equivalent is, like what would be the fanciest cheese you can just pick up off the shelf without going to a specialist cheese place? Just going to a normal food shop.
specialist cheese place. Probably like brie. Brie is pretty like common. Like you can get it at any store. But we had some friends over for New Year's, and one of them brought over a charcuterie board, and there was all sorts of crap on there that I didn't want anything to do with. There was one cheese that smelled like straight up ass, and I was just like, get this stinky cheese out of my house. I think it was actually Asiago, which isn't that bad when you have it mixed with some other stuff, but at that point I called it Asiago and I wanted it out. It was bad. It was disgusting. And I even ate one.
I love the fact that you've got like access to such little cheese. Yet if we go to our local supermarket, there's probably half an aisle, probably looking at like 20 shelves of cheese, dedicated to cheese.
We've got a lot of cheese, but it's the same stuff. Like we've got your mild cheddar, your regular cheddar, your sharp cheddar, your extra sharp cheddar, your white cheddar, your white sharp cheddar. It's like, my God. And then you get it either shredded or in a block or cubed or string cheese, or like, it's ridiculous, but it's all the same shit.
Just all of the shapes, but none of the flavors.
All of the shapes, but none of the fun. Yes.
Do you have? Is it camembert over there? That's the dipping one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the one you
Yeah.
stick in the oven.
I don't know what that is. I'm sure we have it, but it doesn't go near
It's a cheese.
me.
You cook it in the oven, and it's like a liquidy cheese that you dip shit in. Oh, it's great. Bit sickly, but it's great.
If I ever come to the UK, I'm just gonna go on like a cheese tour. That's what I'm doing. A cheese
Great
and
with
toast.
bread.
A cheese and toast tour. Yeah. All right. Let's move back into COVID topics. Let's go with the holidays. You already alluded to a little bit, Shane, your nephew opening his gifts through the rain and your tears and the front door. How Mike, especially you having kids, like how were the holidays different? I know you were supposed to travel and weren't able to do that. How did COVID change your holiday plans, and how did you just adapt, and what did you end up doing, especially Christmas?
So yeah, around Christmas, I just sort of have two older children that live with their mum. So I was able to see them, but I have been like distancing and trying to isolate just a extra level of precaution.
Sure.
Trying not to mix too many households and stuff. So yeah, I managed to, it was just like, I've got to see them for Christmas, so we went and picked them up, and we had like a bit of a Christmas sort of mini Christmas before the actual Christmas, and then so they went back to their mums. So for actual Christmas, so like you said, I was meant to go away. I was meant to travel to Germany. We've got family living over there. We'd sent all the presents over and everything. But like 5 hours before we were meant to fly, like they closed all of the borders down because of this new strain of COVID.
Yeah, thanks for
So,
that, by
yeah.
the way. Pretty sure that came from like Shane's neighbor's house.
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah, Kent born and raised.
So you just kind of had to change your plan. So then was it just a low key Christmas, you, Ellie, and Willow, and just kind of just had a nice family day, or what did you really end up doing then?
Yeah, to be fair, it was kind of a pretty standard sort of Christmas that we'd have anyway, because there's me, Ellie, and Ellie's mum all work together.
Oh yeah.
So although we're separate households, it's kind of pretty much the same because
Sure.
we work together. So were with each other every day, so we kind of just had Christmas over at hers and just had a standard Christmas meal, and that's it. That's about it.
Nice. Shane, what about you? How'd your plans change compared to what they normally would be?
I mean, in fairness, they didn't change too dramatically. I would usually go around my sister's in the morning and spend some time around there. Obviously, as I said earlier, I did it from the garden. We have a bubble with Lauren's dad anyway, so he came round because he lives alone, so we're in a bubble with him. And we would do that every year anyway. He'd come to ours, so that there was no change there.
Nice.
The only real difference for us is that we usually spend the evening at her mum's house opening presents and stuff, which we obviously couldn't do, so we ended up doing that all over Zoom. But yeah, there wasn't any real massive change. The actual day itself was fairly similar. It was just not visiting our parent.
Nice.
So
for me and Becca, so Becca's birthday is the day before Christmas Eve, and her brother's birthday is a couple of days before that. So that whole week we mostly spent with her family, but all of our other Christmases were canceled. We usually go to one of her relatives on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. That was canceled. We usually go to one of my aunt's houses, and that was canceled. Even my family Christmas still hasn't happened. We're looking at next month maybe, depending on how many people can get the vaccine and can get there safely and do it safely. So really, we just went to Becca's mom's house and hung out on Christmas Eve, I think it was, and then Christmas Day, it was just me and Becca, and we hung out. We just kind of took it easy, and it was a low-key Christmas. But I think even with COVID, I mean, Christmas is my favorite holiday. I mean, it's snowing right now, and I'm so excited. Like, I just love snow. I love Christmas. I love Christmas lights. It just didn't really feel like Christmas this year. We didn't even decorate very much, which was kind of a bummer. We just didn't get around to it. We just didn't care so much. So I hope next year is going to be like super excited. Like, people are going to be really looking forward to seeing each other, and hopefully we're able to do that, because Christmas is still Christmas, but it just didn't seem totally the same. And some of those family members that canceled on Christmas, I only see them once a year, and that's then. So bit of a bummer, but it's what we had to do. I think we did Zoom on Christmas Day with my family for a while, so we gotta say hi to the people that were supposed to be in the same room, but it's just how it went. And then for Thanksgiving, everybody canceled Thanksgiving except for Becca's mom. And at that point, that was when COVID was getting real bad, and her mom was working with COVID patients. So that's when I stayed at home and I played God of War for the first time all day. My Christmas dinner was like this 6-pound macaroni and cheese. It was awesome. Totally worth it. I stayed home. My wife went to her mom's house, and that was that. All right, so then holidays. Let's transition into weddings a little bit. And we could probably do quite an episode on weddings alone, but since all three of us were kind of looking at something like that this year, we all had to change our plans quite drastically. Shane, I know the least about yours, but I know I ended up getting married on Halloween. We were supposed to have quite the party, pretty big guest list. Hey, cat. My cat's eating Jar Jar Binks action figure. Get out of here.
I mean, Jar Jar Binks deserved it.
Jeez. She was literally chomping on Jar Jar over there. Anyway. So it was about, I would say June. I think it was June, where I finally reached out to my wedding venue, and we had a wedding planner as part of the package. And I was like, hey, we're contemplating pushing this. What do you think? No, it was before June. It had to be like May. I was like, we're thinking about pushing this. What do you think? Will we get our deposits? Blah, blah, blah. And she goes, well, if you guys aren't comfortable, then we should definitely look at rescheduling. Then that just makes the most sense. So we were able to push ours until later this year, October this year. You guys will get invited. Whether or not you come, that's up to COVID and up to you, the British. But anyway, that's just my point. Just another little throw out that we're friends. So we had to push the wedding, but we did end up getting married on Halloween. One of my buddies, who's actually going to be on the second episode of this, was my officiate. Two of our friends were our witnesses, and then two of my other friends were the photographers, and then obviously my wife was there. But even COVID have tried to affect that. 2 days before, our photographer texted us and said, "Hey, we just found out we might have been exposed. We're getting tested, but we don't know yet. I just wanted to let you know, even if we find out we're positive, how do you want to handle this?" And we're like, well, we ended up getting married at a nature reserve, which was actually pretty cool. It was this very wide open park, basically, that had like different trails and different trees and different hiking paths. And we just got married outside, very low key. No family was involved at all, which is kind of how we wanted it, just because it would have been too hard to decide who was going to be able to be there. And the morning of, or the day before, I think one of our witnesses was like, "Yeah, I'm not feeling so well. I'm a little worried I have COVID." And by the next morning, they were fine, so they were able to come. But we kept it really low key and had a couple friends over that night. We had a cake. It was a good day. But now we have to plan wedding 2.0, which is basically our giant reception that costs all the money that we should just not do and save. But anyway, Mike, I know you had your whole wedding planned and you had to postpone the entire thing until this year. Shane, I'm not entirely sure on your plans, but did you just kind of accept it for what it was, or were you super bummed out, or?
So for me and Ellie, it was all about the party.
Yeah, same.
You know.
Yep.
The actual marriage bit was just the paperwork.
Yeah.
So
it's just the forever part.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a major hit for us. But we sort of rescheduled the wedding for this year in June.
Do you think you're still going to be able to do it as planned, or do you think it's going to shift again, change somehow?
We're just kind of waiting and seeing now. We need to have another meeting with our advisor, our wedding planner.
Yeah.
Just to see if we can maybe. We're looking at. I think now you're allowed about 6 people. I think to a wedding.
6.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had around 90 to 100 planned.
Oh, we had
so yeah.
We had 325 planned.
Yeah. But we were trying to keep it quite small as well, but
yeah, so were we.
Yeah, the guest list just expands, doesn't it? As you're drawing it up, you're like, oh, but if I invite them, and then I've got to invite these, and then it just, yeah.
And it's so stupid too, because at least with Becca's side of her list, I'm like, I've never even heard of this person. Do they really need to be invited? But we're also getting married in my hometown, which is about 2 hours away from her hometown. So I was kind of hoping we could weed out some people. It's in the end of October. It's going to be questionable weather. Sometimes we get snow as early as the end of October. So we're kind of like, maybe we can naturally keep some people from coming without going crazy, but still invite them. But same as you, we really cared about the party. And when we found out that some people were getting the calls the week of their wedding and saying, "Hey, you got to cut half your guest list or you can't have it," then I was just like, yeah. I refuse to be the one to call people. I'm like, sorry, Aunt Becky, you can't come. Yeah, maybe next year. So we're like, if we want a big party, we're getting our big party. Let's cut the guest. Let's not cut the guest list, and let's push the whole thing back a year, and we'll still get married, and that's good enough for now. Mm-hmm. Shane, what about you?
Yeah, I don't actually have anything to say on this because so when we booked our wedding, we booked it it was either very early last year before sort of all this COVID stuff started going on. Potentially the year before, I can't remember now. But we booked it with we originally were going to book it for this year, and we decided actually we won't, and nothing to do with COVID. It was merely because I wanted to make sure we had enough time to save enough money. So our wedding isn't actually booked until middle of next year anyway.
Oh, nice! I didn't know that.
We actually got just because of my own personal need to make sure that my finances are under control. We really luckily
spreadsheet.
Yeah.
They did, yeah. We're really lucky in that because we had already planned for it to be next year. We're on sort of working our way through that. I know, we did book it last year because it was in the middle of all this COVID stuff that was happening, because we still haven't managed to get wedding insurance because it's like impossible to buy at the moment.
I was gonna say, you probably could have.
No one's doing it.
You could have got like a venue discount if you booked during COVID. Save some money.
Well, again, this was right at the beginning when nobody thought it was going to last longer than a few months. So we did the socially distanced like viewing and everything, because everyone's like, no, it's only going to last a few months, it'll be fine. But yeah, we're not booked until next year. But we do have friends that have. One of our friends is on her 4th wedding move now. She's been moved 4 times. So it was meant to have been in the summer, then it was in the winter, then it was moved to like February. So it's actually meant to be this week, and it's been now been moved again. And this year, I mean, obviously Mike's getting married. Another one of my friends has moved their wedding from last year to this year. Max has got his wedding this year. There's so many people's weddings this year. And like Mike was just saying, we don't even know if those ones are going to be going ahead as planned this year, or if they're going to have to get moved as well. So it could be that 2022 is a big year for weddings.
We have a wedding to go to in a month that got rescheduled from last September. And when we decided to push it, we were like, oh, we can maybe get married in like March or April. But I was like, I think that's going to be too soon. Let's just still get married and just push it for a full year out. And we happened to be able to get exactly a year. We were 1 day off of Halloween. It's the 30th, so that's pretty darn good. They happen to still have it available, which is insane, because October is probably the second busiest month for weddings in this part of the country. So we got super lucky. But yeah, I mean, it's just how it goes. I was a little bit worried about the venue kind of working with us, but they're in the same boat. They had plenty of weddings that were happening still with limited capacity, and they're just like, they know that they had to work with us. They had to change some policies, but then even then we were working with like a caterer. So like, what if they had different restrictions for food and how it was served? Like, it was just easier to push it. But we also decided to have similar to you, Shane, we decided to have a 2-year engagement because I wanted to save up some money. We wanted to buy a house. We got one more thing. The silver linings to COVID. I think personally, I learned quite a bit about myself. I think I had a lot of good quality time with my new bride. And I think between all the things that happened, there's a lot of stuff that happened with my employment, which we can talk about in another episode. Just getting a different boss, how it pushed me to do new things, gave us time to do new things, show off new skills, kind of figure out what kind of person you want to be. I want to do a whole episode on like, what kind of person do you want to be and how do you get there? But like, I got a bunch of tattoos during COVID, which is pretty cool and rebellious and anti-Shane. Triple XP was a huge thing that came out of COVID. So just kind of give me your guys' little silver linings. And then, I guess my last silver lining is I was able to get the vaccine on Friday. I think I'm recovered finally, but I felt a little dizzy after getting it. My arm is still a little bit sore 2 days later, but I was lucky enough to be able to get it. I get my second shot in 3 weeks, I think it is, but hopefully everybody can get theirs sooner than later. Mike, are you expected to get yours soon since you work in healthcare, sort of?
Yeah, it should be pretty soon, yeah.
Nice. So I guess that's my silver lining, is just the place that I work was able to provide the vaccine for me, and I think that's pretty lucky, all things considered, and hopefully everybody else can get there soon. So Mike, go ahead and go first. What's your silver linings with COVID? And then we'll move into the final.
So like I said, being a new father, like getting to spend more time watching Willow grow and like helping her develop and stuff has been like a huge boost, not only to like my own mental well-being, but you know, it's just like great to see. So sure. Yeah, that for one, and it's might lean into maybe what Shane might hopefully mention, but Triple XP has been like a huge thing, like just a creative outlet, and it's been great.
No, I hate it.
Cancelled. Shane, what about you?
I mean, yeah, obviously Triple XP has been great. I absolutely love doing that, and obviously that's helped spawn this. So that's been sort of the biggest silver lining. My garden's looking good because we finally had time to spend in it. Spent most of my summer building flower beds and whatnot. And the last one is just bank balance. Like my bank balance is looking so much better now that I'm not spunking money on things I don't need all the time by going out and just buying stuff randomly. Like being locked in your, well, I say locked in, you're not locked in, but being like stuck in your house for months on end, like you realize that how much money you just blow on stuff you don't need. How many like random trips to the shops, you're just buying a sandwich or something that you don't need, like trips to restaurants that you don't need. So yeah, from a financial point of view, it's actually been really beneficial for us.
Yeah, I spent money on very different things, I think, than I would have in a non-COVID.
Yeah.
I never would have had a PC, but then I never would have met you guys. I never would have done this podcast. Never would have been on your podcast. It's all related. So, all right, final segment. This is going to be a quick fire round where I ask you guys questions. You tell me the first thing that comes to your mind or whatever your answer may be. Sometimes it's not like a Rorschach test where you got to look and see what the blob is to you. We're not trying to go that deep. All right, we'll start simple. Favorite color? Mike, go.
Black.
Shane.
Blue.
Movie? Mike.
Anything by Quentin Tarantino. Django Unchained. It's
Shane.
up there.
The original Transformers animated.
Nice. One more easy one. Mike, favorite video game?
Oh, Last of Us 2.
Shane?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think I
You don't know what your favorite video game is? Okay, a favorite, maybe not your top favorite.
The Tomb Raider remake, the first one.
Okay, now we're getting into the harder questions. Mike, what did you want to be when you grew up? When you grow up, I guess, or when you grow up.
An astronaut, man. Yeah.
Okay, Shane?
Archaeologist.
Nice, that makes sense.
Well, not archaeologist, paleontologist, sorry.
What's the difference?
One looks at dinosaurs, one looks at old buildings.
Paleontologist, dinosaurs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Paleontologist, dinosaurs, archaeologist is just old shit.
If you could have any food or drink right now in front of you that you're like hungry for, what would it be? Mike?
Pizza. Always pizza.
Shane?
Or some good spaghetti.
Just a really good greasy burger.
All right. Mike, who would play you in a movie about your life?
Oh God.
It's definitely Jack Black. That's who it is.
We'll go with that.
That's a pretty good answer. Shane, what about you?
I don't know. What's the nerdiest spreadsheetist actor you can think of?
He's that guy from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
What is his name? I know who you're talking about.
I don't know his name, but him.
You kind of look like somebody like Ezra Miller or somebody could play you too, though.
Yeah, or Harold Ramis from the original Ghostbusters.
There you go. We'll go with that. All right. What's your dream job, Mike? Like nowadays. What's your current dream job? Like if depending on like video game designer, video game tester, food tester. I mean, I don't know, whatever it is. Like right now, if somebody was like, "Hey, you want to do this?" You'd be like, "Hell yeah, I want to do this."
Video game journalism was something I've always wanted to career-wise go into. Yeah.
Makes sense with Triple XP. Shane, what about you?
Yeah.
Spreadsheet wizard. A what?
A chuckle brother.
What's that mean?
I've heard there's a vacancy for that.
There is, isn't there?
What does this mean?
He's a kids' TV entertainer. No, probably still a paleontologist now. I just find dinosaurs very interesting.
Nice. All right, 2 more questions. Mike, do you believe in aliens?
Yes, there has to be.
Shane, you're a very logical person. Surely you believe in aliens.
I mean, 100%, but it depends how you're defining the word aliens, considering you use it to refer to people from another country.
Life outside of our planet.
Then yes.
We're gonna do a podcast episode on aliens, and maybe you guys can be my guest.
Yes, I love alien conspiracy theories.
Dude,
they're my favorite.
Same. I don't know how much conspiracies we can go into before I get in trouble, but we're gonna do it anyway. Okay, this is the last one. Mike, what is your favorite bit of advice that you've ever received?
Don't eat yellow snow was the first thing that came to mind.
Shane?
Don't sweat the small stuff.
Nice. All right, so to end this, we're going to go to the Twitter poll results. I had asked my followers, COVID has taught me most about, and the options were myself, my significant other, my friends, and my family. What do you guys think was which one do you think won?
I know I voted for family, but I think it's probably myself would be like the number one.
Yeah, I think that's probably number one.
So number one was myself with 38.5% of the votes. Second place was my family with 30.8%, which was, I actually was surprised by that. Third place was my friends, 23.1%, and my significant other was 7.7%, which I was actually surprised by that because I spent way more time with my significant other in a small space for a long time. Even over Christmas break, I took 2 weeks off of work and we hung out and just watched TV, and it was awesome, but it just...
Yeah, but mathematically, you still spent more time with yourself.
True. And we'll probably do another episode about what COVID taught. More about yourself. I think we can get into that even further. All right. So to wrap up, I guess tell me a little bit about Triple XP. Maybe plug it. What's next? What are your goals? What are your goals in 2021 for Triple XP? Let's go with that. That's a good ending.
Just because I run the YouTube. Just want 100 subscribers, like just because I want that URL.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, it's not something we aim to make money from or anything like that. It's never been like the goal, but just I think community's always been a big thing to me personally. So just gaining a community around that would be awesome.
And you've talked about upping the production a little bit with new PCs and stuff for both of you, and being able to tweak it a little bit, but. Shane, what about you?
Yeah.
What are your goals for 2021?
I think, like, for me, the biggest Triple XP goal is to explore more guests from different backgrounds.
Sure.
I've just been talking to Mike a lot about this recently. Like, we have a lot of streamers on, but like looking at artists and developers and just getting like a bigger background source of guests that we can speak to.
Yeah. And
sort of get information from.
Super excited to have you guys on in the first episode, and you guys pushed me to do this in the first place, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, man,
been our pleasure.
All right, you guys have anything else to add before we wrap on up here? Shane, Mike?
Go to the YouTube, subscribe because it'll make Mike happy.
Yes, I will.
Go to Spotify.
Yes, I
and
will.
Follow because it'll make me happy.
I will link your channel down below, and yeah.
You'll notice if you ever watch our Twitter, if it's got a Spotify link first, I've done it. If it's got a YouTube link, Mike's done it. He pushes the YouTube, I push the Spotify pretty hard. We're like warring as to who can get the most followers on each platform.
That's smart. Yeah. That's how you do it. All right. Well, with that, we're going to wrap up the first ever episode of